Just take a moment and look around this room. Feel this, the energy, the anticipation, and this collective power. The WBN is a strong, uplifting network group with the core purpose of supporting the business success of women in the Comox Valley. It is my honor to welcome you to an evening we have been dreaming about, building toward, and waiting for. We have crafted this evening intentionally with remarkable local entrepreneurs who are not only building businesses, but building strength. Women who lead with courage. Women who lead with heart. And I'm especially grateful tonight to see not only our members, but the partners, families, colleagues, and friends, because we all know that nobody builds anything meaningful alone. Tonight, we will hear stories that redefine leadership. Not leadership as a title, but leadership as courage, as resilience, as self-reflection. This evening is all about the ripple effect of one woman daring to step forward and how that inspires another to do the same. So, with excitement and gratitude, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our moderator, a friend who embodies thoughtful leadership and truly authentic connection, the wonderful Pauline Stevenson.
Thank you, Chrissy. Good evening, everyone. It is truly an honor to be here with you tonight as the Regional Ambassador of WeBC and as a partner for WBN. When I look around the audience, I see more than simply people sitting in seats. I see leaders, builders, women who are shaping families, businesses, communities, and futures. And that matters. Thank you all for showing up. My hope tonight is that you leave here inspired not just by the stories, but the possibility within yourselves, and that you will choose to live a life where we support one another boldly, where we advocate for women's voices in rooms of influence, where we lift women to their highest potential, and we shine that leadership light ever so brightly. This evening, each speaker will courageously and authentically share their lived experience, not for applause, although please be warm, not for perfection, but for impact. Because when women share bravely, their stories do more than reflect the past, they shape the future. They become the role models who quietly, powerfully influence the next generation of leaders. Our intention tonight is to provide you with value, encouragement, inspiration, and practical tools to carry forward in your own journey. And now, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our kickoff speaker. Our first speaker is a keynote speaker, business strategist, and #1 best-selling author who helps women align purpose with growth in both life and business. She'll share insights on authenticity, leadership, and unapologetic power. Please help me welcome Ali Seller, How to Define Your Life by Defining Your Purpose.
Can we be honest for a moment? How many of you have answered the question, how are you, with, I'm fine? Not the good fine. I don't mean the mirror fine when you catch a reflection and think, okay, I'm fine. I'm talking about the other fine, the tired fine, the polite fine, the please don't ask me a follow-up question fine, the fine that really means I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm holding it together, but barely. And if you're married, you already know fine is an entire language. Don't believe me? Who's married in this room? Hands up. If my husband asks me, hey, are you okay? And I say, I'm fine. He knows he better find a pillow and another postal code for a couple of nights. Because we all know fine isn't an answer. It's a warning label. Here's what I've come to believe. Fine is the most socially acceptable way to stay stuck because no one rushes to help someone who says they're fine. Not your friends, not your family, not even you. Anyone here a fan of mini donuts? Well, for a brief, glorious season, my local Costco sold them. Walking into Costco while that machine was running, pure joy. At the time, I had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and I was pregnant with my 3rd son, so don't judge. Those donuts were survival. My boys were born expert negotiators. Mom, you get us mini donuts, we'll hold our pee till we get home. Deal. Mini donuts became our family's currency for avoiding public washrooms. Then one day we walk in, we take a deep breath, nothing. We head to the usual spot, empty. I see an employee and I say, excuse me, sir, where are the mini donuts? And he says, oh, we pulled those last week. We won't be offering them anymore. And just as I'm about to say, that's fine, my 4-year-old, perched in the cart like a tiny king, locks eyes with the man and says, well, that's beep. Yep, that F word dropped like a mic. My face went beet red. I'm about to explain that I definitely don't talk like that. He must have got it from his dad. But before I could say a word, the Costco guy fist pumps my son and says, you're right, little dude, it is. And in that moment, I got it. My son was right. It wasn't fine. It was disappointing. And pretending it was fine didn't make it better. It only made it quieter. I realized in that moment that we don't stop feeling disappointment. We just stop giving ourselves permission to name it. We're taught very young to minimize truth, to swallow frustration. You're okay. Don't be silly. You're fine. And then we grow up and we do the same thing in our lives. We say, I'm fine about jobs that drain us. I'm fine about schedules that suffocate us. I'm fine about relationships that no longer fit. And soon, fine becomes a habit. And habits are sneaky. They don't ask for permission. They just slowly take over, turning your truth into a whisper. And the longer you whisper, the more you forget you ever had a voice. Most women don't feel stuck because they're lazy or unmotivated. They feel stuck because their lives have become comfortable enough to tolerate, well, misaligned enough to slowly wear them down. Stagnancy doesn't look like failure. It looks like functioning. You're showing up. You're doing the things you're supposed to do. You're ticking the boxes. But somewhere along the way, you forgot to stop and ask yourself, is this really the life I want to be living? One morning, my son called me to his room in a panic. Mom, hurry. You know that tone, the one that makes your stomach drop? I ran to him. What's the matter? He pointed to his fishbowl. Through tears, he cried, "He's gone." What? What do you mean he's gone? Fish can't just disappear. I bent down to show him the fish. But no fish. I checked the little ceramic castle. I gave the bowl a shake. Nothing. I frantically scanned the floor. Did he jump out? Can we still save him? And then I leaned in closer. That's when I saw it. Remnants, bones. The fish hadn't disappeared. The fish had died. And I had been so disconnected, so scheduled, so rushed, I didn't even notice. Day after day, I was running my mornings like a boot camp. Wake up, make the bed, feed the fish. Repeat, make the bed, feed the fish. Not once did I see the fish was slowing down. Not once did I see him swimming closer to the surface. I was so shocked by this, I actually Googled it later. Do you know how long it takes for a betta fish to decompose? I do. 7 to 10 days. For a week, I was going through the motions, standing in front of that bowl, feeding a dead fish. That is exactly what fine looks like. We're feeding things, jobs, relationships, routines that have been dead a long time. We go through the motions, but we're not really there. I had been living under the lie that hustle equals success, moving quick, but not present. I had sacrificed awareness for achievement because fine doesn't demand change. It demands endurance. From the outside, like many of us, my life looked successful, busy, productive, full. But on the inside, like many of us, I was tired, distracted, pushing through days I couldn't get back. That is what makes fine so dangerous. It can look like you're winning while quietly losing yourself. Here's what changed everything for me. I realized purpose isn't what you do. Purpose is how you decide what deserves your yes. Pressure says, keep up. Purpose says, come home. Pressure asks, what will people think? Purpose asks, what matters to me? Pressure fills your calendar. Purpose fills your life. Pressure can make you impressive, but purpose makes you present. I didn't hit rock bottom. I didn't have a crisis. I just had a moment of honesty staring at a fishbowl. We don't drift into a life we love, we define it. And when we don't define it, other people will do it for you. So I want to leave you with 3 questions. Where are you saying fine to a change you already know you need? What are you saying yes to out of expectation, not alignment? And if you could jump ahead 5 years and look back, what would you wish you'd been brave enough to change today? You don't need permission to want more. You don't need a crisis to change. And you don't have to have it all figured out to take the first step. You just need the courage to stop calling a life that no longer fits you fine. I think some of you already know what that word has been covering up. Because the moment you define your life by defining your purpose is the moment you stop settling and start living. Thank you.
This week is International Women's Day. And weeks like this, we hear a lot of words about women. Strong, resilient, resourceful. And don't get me wrong, I love those words. But if I'm being really honest, they also make me cringe a little. In 2008, I woke to the smell of my favorite coffee, Kicking Horse, kicked on my fuzzy slippers, and stumbled over to my email. And oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I had just been recruited to Canada's largest healthcare company. I was elated. I wanted to jump and leap like Tom Cruise did on Oprah's couch. And I know a lot of the young people in here have no idea what I'm talking about, but a few wily veterans will get that one. I started that job saying yes to absolutely everything. I was so eager to prove myself and move in the chain of command and really make a mark on this place. And the more I made things happen and the more I was capable and the more things I grew, the more my responsibilities grew and the more my limits got stretched. I grew from 18 to 53 sites in the span of 8 years. I worked my ass off. I had to outperform every single man on my team, and I did. I actually moved up into a provincial VP position, and I was super proud and excited about it. At the same time, though, I was raising 2 kids, and I was navigating a divorce with a man who was struggling with alcoholism. And that job was the only thing keeping a roof over our heads, and I could not afford to lose it. I became incredibly adept at survival. But it felt like being attached to an IV full of adrenaline that no matter how hard I tried, I could not yank it out. One morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee, and my head weighed 1,000 pounds. I couldn't lift it off the pillow. And some of you know that feeling. I stayed that way for 3 solid months. And while I was experiencing the pain and exhaustion and panic and rage, my job was reallocated to an aspiring male colleague who expressed concern to my boss that the stresses of being a single mom would hamper the future growth and performance of my region. So, for the next year, I watched as he dismantled everything that I had grown. And eventually, I just left. I am going to share a poem with you that I wrote during that period. 2008, like yesterday, like ancient history, a restless cub full of mischief and mystery, unafraid to tumble and leap, no prey too big, no hill too steep, the rhythmic beat of a heart connected, nourished, loved, fiercely protected. Beat, 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 beat. And in the distance, a hum, a drum, the promise of more and the will to become bigger, better, stronger, faster, a force, a champion, destiny master. We must beat, you must beat, beat, beat. The pack, the pride, the roar, the fight, we'd slay and feast till the dying light. But in the fever and the fray, there will always be a price to pay. I am beat. I am so beat, beat, beat. And where the huntress once stood tall, her heavy head begins to fall. Her mind abuzz with incessant chatter. You're weak, you're tired, you just don't matter. Blaming, shaming, ripping apart my peace, my breath, my pounding heart. A pause, a breath, and space to reflect, and time to truly reconnect. And from that place of fear and doubt, a lioness came roaring out. Strong, open heart, open eyes, fierce and tender, strong and wise. A torso full of jagged scars and lessons from those pointless wars. The rhythmic beat of a heart connected, nourished, loved, fiercely protected. Beat, 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 beat. I wrote that poem long before I understood what burnout was, long before I understood the breadth and strength and absolute power of our own nervous system. And as luck would have it, my next job was in a brain health research center where I could learn all about that. It was wonderful. I was exposed to an absolutely mind-blowing array of technologies and tools. The timing could not have been more perfect. And it was something that happened as I was treating there as a physiotherapist that clicked for me. And that is, all of these chronic conditions that I'd been exposed to for like 35 years were all repetitive firing patterns in the brain. Chronic pain is a pain signal that fires over and over and over and over. PTSD and the anxiety, a circuit that's running in your brain over and over and over. Depression and those self-defeating, awful thoughts are thought patterns wired in your brain over and over and over. Those fight or flight and fear reactions just become automatically wired in our nervous system, almost familiar, just waiting for the next trigger. And as therapists, we're constantly treating the symptoms and ignoring the underlying circuitry. So something really clicked for me. Recovery shouldn't be something that you earn at the end of a good job. It shouldn't be some kind of reward. It should be something we build into the rhythm of our daily lives, into the rhythm of our work cycles, into everything. Just like the circadian rhythms that govern night and day and the seasons. Did you actually know that you also have something called an ultradian rhythm? It's actually a 90-minute cycle of focus and flow and energy that repeats over and over and over the course of a day. And it's something you can surf and actually gain more energy by actually paying attention to when you need rest and when you need recovery and when you feel that energy rise to get things done. And there's an art to that. There's a flow to that. And what's incredible is that flow states are 250% more productive. So not only can you leverage the cycles and the rhythms in your life, you can actually use tools to strengthen your energy and build your resiliency. And being in the research lab was incredible because I got to work with those tools every day, things like infrared light and vibration and different levels of, losing my train of thought. Different levels of activity through the day and movement. Certain movement patterns can actually stimulate different ways of thinking. So there are all these incredible tools that we can use to actually boost our system. Imagine actually going to work to get well instead of getting exhausted and exasperated. So I was galvanized. I was so excited. So I went to my new bosses, and who at this time had become pretty reliant on me because I was traveling from the Comox Valley to Vancouver every week and working across 3 divisions of the company, which sounds a little familiar. And so I pitched this idea to my new bosses, this whole idea of a tech-enabled, recovery-oriented workplace and finding ways more creative ways to manage our systems. And they very gently mansplained to me all of the reasons that was never going to work and all of the barriers that were going to come up. And you know what? My people-pleasing circuitry kicked right in. I was like, oh, yeah, of course. No, that's a terrible idea. I'll just drop it. And in my own head, this little voice was like, oh, and yeah, you're about to turn 55, like it's a little late. So I had a realization as I was taking the ferry home that day. We as women are so conditioned to adapt, to perform, to push through, to keep going even when everything in our own body is telling us we need to pause, begging us to pause. So instead of listening to that outworn circuitry that was going on in my own head, I paused. I took a breath. I walked in, I lifted my head up, I handed in my resignation, I gave him a little wink, and I said, hold my beer. I woke up on my 55th birthday to the smell of coffee, the crowing of Mexican roosters, and an email telling me that my new company had just been incorporated. It occurred to me that strength without recovery isn't resiliency. It's actually depletion in disguise. And we subscribe to that far too often. Leadership is the courage to find your own rhythm, to actually trust it, to embrace it and celebrate it. And as it turns out, courage is contagious. As soon as I did that, a lot of the girlfriends in my life that have been rooting and cheering for me and rocking it started finding their own rhythm. Next thing you know, we're having a little dance party. And in this world right now where things are so crazy and chaotic and there's just this cacophonous noise going on, it is so beautiful to know that when we put all of our rhythms together, that we can actually root ourselves and make some really great music and actually move through lives in a way that feels much more manageable, much more connected, and much more filled with joy. And I think the world could use a lot more of that. Thank you.
As a social worker, I am used to having vulnerable conversations, but usually those conversations are 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. If I'm running a group, maybe 8-to-1. They're not 500-to-1. I'm feeling a little nervous. But fellow social worker Brene Brown talks about how true bravery shows up when we are willing to be vulnerable. So that's my plan tonight, to be brave and to be vulnerable with you. In 2015, I remember driving back from the fertility clinic in Victoria, sobbing and feeling so alone. I had been in the car for 6 hours that day for a 10-minute appointment with the doctor about what IVF would look like. The injections, the tests, the ultrasounds, and the chances of getting pregnant even with that much medical intervention. My sister-in-law had recently called to tell us she was having a baby. My best friend had welcomed a beautiful baby girl. Everywhere I looked, there were babies around me, but those going through IVF were nowhere to be found. Research has shown us that the mental health impact of infertility is similar to that of a new cancer diagnosis. That's huge. But what made it hardest was that I felt alone in doing it. I don't think I need to tell you that we don't talk enough about women's health or about perinatal mental health. But did you know that 1 in 6 couples will experience infertility? 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in a miscarriage. 1 in 5 people who give birth, and 1 in 10 non-birthing partners, that's the other parents, the dads out there, will experience a perinatal mood disorder. And I would actually argue that those last 2 statistics are quite low because the shame and stigma of mental health, coupled with our cultural expectations for moms to show up in a certain way, leaves perinatal mental health underreported. Either way, these are big numbers. If there are 500 people here tonight, take a look around. My guess is you'll see somebody who has experienced infertility. You'll see someone who has experienced pregnancy loss. You'll see somebody who has experienced a perinatal mood disorder, or maybe all of the above. We are surrounded by women carrying heavy stories silently. There was an irony to me feeling so alone that day in the car in 2015. I had been a social worker for about 6 years at that point. My job was to hold people in their most vulnerable moments, to support them, to find their voice, and to fight for them to get what they needed. I was a vocal advocate. I believed strongly in the work that I did. And yet, I struggled to speak my own truth. So, following that day in the car, I recognized that I needed more support. And I did what any good millennial would do. I started an Instagram account to document my IVF journey. I know, but bear with me. Because in this Instagram account, I found a community of women around the world who were also going through IVF. In connecting with this community, I was able to express my grief, my fear, my anger, and even a little bit of hope. All of my feelings were normal because my community was feeling them too. Together, we supported one another through triumphs and heartbreak. We also understood all of the weird superstitions that come with infertility. Of course you need French fries after an embryo transfer. Cozy socks and pomegranate juice, it's just part of the journey. No judgment was made, no questions were asked. I was able to show up as I was. Of course, Instagram didn't replace face-to-face human connection, but it did fill a gap when I needed it most. My husband and I are the lucky ones. Our first embryo transfer resulted in a pregnancy. In fact, it worked so well that the one embryo that we transferred split, and I was pregnant with identical twins. My doctor was quick to tell me to brace for a tricky pregnancy. Identical twins are unpredictable. There is a lot that can go wrong in a twin pregnancy. Once again, my Instagram community rallied around me and held space for both my joy, but also my fear. But I longed for that human connection. Where were the other twin moms? Or better yet, somebody who understood the complexity of pregnancy after infertility. At 23 weeks pregnant, I went for a routine ultrasound and was told that my body was preparing for labor. 4 months too early. I was sent to BC Women's and later to Victoria General Hospital, where I had to have many tricky conversations about what would happen if my boys were born so soon. I was terrified. I am so grateful for the support of my family and friends during this time and the rest of my journey, but the truth is I felt really alone. So I learned to knit. I watched way too many episodes of Grey's Anatomy, and I sat in my fear and anxiety. Anxiety that probably wasn't helped by all the episodes of Grey's Anatomy. One day, I was offered some relief when a former NICU mom came to see me in the hospital. She shared her own story of preterm labor and held space for mine and listened to my fears. That face-to-face human connection was exactly what I needed. What a beautiful gift to give back with your story and your strength. Once again, we were the lucky ones. After 1 month on bed rest in the hospital, I spent another 2 months on bed rest in Victoria at my in-laws so I could be close to VGH. And my boys were born only 1 month early, 5 pounds, and very healthy for identical twins. After only 12 hours in the NICU, my husband and I were sent off into the world with 2 3-day-old babies. As you can imagine, after 3 months on bed rest, 3 hours from home, this was a bit of an adjustment. I found a group at the Lewis Center and I started attending right away. It was here I found another incredible group of women. These women were in the trenches of early motherhood. In this group, I made some meaningful connections, some of whom are still dear friends and make up what I fondly call my village. In this group, I was able to show up as I was. Messy hair, covered in coffee and breast milk, totally exhausted, and the facilitator would support me by recognizing when I was outnumbered by 2 cranky babies and cuddle one of my babies. Most importantly, I was able to be real about how little sleep I was getting and how overwhelming parenting can feel, both in the love and the joy, but also in the sheer frustration. These authentic friendships and connections allowed me and continue to allow me to be real, be heard, and be held. When my boys were 3 years old, we still had 2 embryos at the fertility clinic, and we decided we were ready to grow our family. So we arranged for a frozen embryo transfer. To our joy, it worked. However, things were not so simple this time. One might argue they weren't that simple the first time either, but they were even less simple this time. After many ultrasounds and blood draws, trying to determine whether or not this was a viable pregnancy, my doctor informed me that it wasn't, but that my body wasn't ready to let go. I was completely heartbroken, absolutely gobsmacked by the grief of a miscarriage. I knew the statistics. Miscarriage is common. Why the hell don't we talk about how much it hurts? During this time, I was in my office one day, and a nurse that I worked with at the time popped her head in one day just to see how I was doing. And I shared with her what was going on. She looked at me and she said, "I will never forget the babies that I lost." That one sentence made everything I was feeling normal. It validated my grief. Following that conversation, I had the courage to then share with other women what was going on, and I quickly found a community of women who had also experienced loss, also felt grief, and had space to hear mine. I wonder if I had not had the courage to speak up that day, if I would have found the same support. I don't think so. Our fertility journey came to an end about a year later when we transferred our final embryo. Unfortunately, it didn't work. In the fertility world, an embryo transfer that doesn't work is called a failed transfer. This language doesn't land for me. Every embryo that is transferred has hopes and dreams tied to it. So for many, it is processed as a loss. It's not a failure. The end of our fertility journey was met with considerable grief. I was able to talk about this grief to some of the moms from my original mom group, as well as other moms who I picked up along the way who also make up my village. I also reached back out to some of the women I had originally connected with on Instagram, women who understood what it was like when your body decides you're done before your heart is ready. I am not sure anyone could understand that unique grief unless they have been through it. My boys are 9 now, and they're incredible. They fill my brain with totally obscure Star Wars facts, and they keep me on my toes, chasing them down the ski hill or around the BMX track. Sometimes grief shows up that I was never able to give them a younger sibling. But mostly, I'm just thrilled to be their mom. When I reflect on my journey, I am so thankful for the women that showed up for me in such a real way. My Instagram community, that NICU mom who came to see me in the hospital, all of the moms who make up my village, my own mom, that nurse who had the courage to share her losses with me, all of the women who made it okay to not be okay. These women made all of my emotions normal and held me at my hardest moments. I believe that when one woman speaks her truth, she makes it easier for another to do the same. If one woman says, "This is hard," others exhale. Support is not about encouragements or platitudes. It's about shared resources, a shared language, and a shared presence. This support sparks resilience. But resilience doesn't mean we need to grin and bear it and face challenges on our own. It means we get to find a safe space where we can co-regulate, be witnessed, and be held. So why do women stay silent? Often the things that women are struggling with are the things that culturally we have been taught to be silent about. Don't share your pregnancy until 12 weeks. What if you miscarry? Saying that motherhood is hard means you don't love and appreciate your children. Or sharing the debilitating pain that returns month to month with your cycle is TMI, or worse yet, totally normal. What if we could share these truths without fear of judgment? As I saw in my own story and I see day to day in my work with clients, silence isolates us, but the truth connects us. So I will leave you with this tonight. If you are carrying something heavy, your story matters. Your truth may be the permission that somebody else needs. Vulnerability sparks community, community sparks support, and support sparks resilience. Thank you.
Oh, I don't need. Good evening. As a medical doctor, I spent most of my career working in hospitals. I worked in critical care. I worked in emergency rooms, and even palliative care. I've seen women age in the real world. I've seen a heart attack at 58. I've seen memory loss and dementia diagnosed at 67, a hip fracture at 70. And with each, a loss of cognition, loss of mobility, a loss of independence. And a world for these women that gets much, much smaller. A few years ago, I started experiencing some symptoms I wasn't a big fan of: brain fog, night sweats. But there was also other things that really got me worried. My cholesterol started to trend up, my blood pressure started to change, I started gaining weight around here. I went to see my family doctor, and I asked her, nothing has changed in my life. Could this have anything to do with my hormone levels? And she said, oh no. That's just part of normal aging. For her, it was all different problems. There was a blood pressure problem, there was a cholesterol problem, and I just found out there was a mood problem. I left her office with 3 prescriptions, one of which was an antidepressant. Yeah. I remember sitting in my car afterwards, and I was really shocked and even ashamed. I thought to myself, if I, as a physician, can't get a colleague to pay attention to this possible connection, what chance does anyone else have? I ended up getting a second opinion. I got started on hormone replacement, started feeling much better, thank you. But I also noticed my cholesterol started to improve, my blood pressure, started losing weight, and I thought, what the heck? What is this? What's the mechanism? My doctor brain was kicking in and just wanting to have answers. So I decided to do a little bit of research. Now, I don't mean a Google search. I don't mean ChatGPT. I mean the peer-reviewed medical literature. I know it's not sexy, but that's what's been my guiding lights for all my career. Turns out I had 80 years of information I needed to get through. I was really behind. All I knew about hormones was what I was taught in medical school and residency. They're dangerous. Don't prescribe them. Well, since you don't have to prescribe them, we won't teach you anything about them. So I started digging into the deep medical literature spanning 80 years, so back to 1944. And I found out that estrogen, for over 30 years, was used to treat breast cancer effectively. Okay, that's interesting. The second thing I found out is that we produce sex hormones from puberty all through our reproductive years. And it turns out that these sex hormones are more than for just reproduction and more than just for sex. While the levels are normal, they protect your heart, your brain, your bones. They keep inflammation and diabetes at bay. And then in your 40s, sometimes even earlier, levels start to go down, and eventually they stop. And with it goes the protection. Atherosclerosis accelerates, osteoporosis accelerates, cognitive decline, insulin resistance, and type 2 diabetes all goes up. And I also found out that women whose hormones were replaced, well, they did a lot better. We saw less cognitive decline, less dementia, less strokes, less heart attacks, less fractures. Heck, why are we offering this to everybody? These are all the very systems I watched failed in hospitals. Oh, right, breast cancer. It turns out that a lot of the fear around hormones, and in particular estrogen, comes from one study that was published when I was still in medical school a long time ago, 2002. And when this study came out, there was a press conference. It was all over the news. The message was simple but terrifying. Estrogen increases the risk of breast cancer. Almost overnight, around the globe, women were taken off hormone replacement, with the consequences that we still see today in our hospitals and our nursing homes. What people don't know is that same study had another group of women. They were only given estrogen. They were not given any of the synthetic hormones. And with estrogen alone, they actually had less risk of breast cancer, significantly less. Where's the press conference? When are we updating our medical community? It never came. Only the wrong message, the scary story spread, the hopeful story that really has an impact on women's health. Who cares? That's not newsworthy. So to this day, many doctors are afraid of hormones. They're afraid of prescribing hormones. And I know this because I used to be one of them. And I was wrong. As people continue to live in fear of hormone replacement, a whole industry filled the gap. Influencers, celebrities, they're all leading the narrative. Maybe you need some personal coaching for that perimenopause symptoms. Maybe you need some supplements endorsed by some celebrity. Maybe you need a weekend retreat to balance your hormones. Oh, and let's not forget a really good fan for those hot flashes in 3 easy payments of $49. Meanwhile, this thing continues to impact women's health and longevity. So we're only a few days away from International Women's Day. Next time menopause comes up in a conversation with colleagues, with friends, in a group chat, talk about the dangers of untreated menopause, the acceleration of heart disease, cognitive decline, fragile bones. If somebody says, oh, estrogen, correct them. Tell them that estrogen at best does not increase the risk of breast cancer. If anything, it seems to lower it. And finally, talk about timing. The longer you are without estrogen, the more damage is happening to your system, to your body. The sooner you get started on replacement, the better the odds that you can change your trajectory. If we have a true conversation, an honest conversation, we can help keep women's world big.
The most basic and powerful way to connect with another person is to listen. Just listen. Perhaps the most important thing we ever give each other is our attention. A loving silence often has more power to heal and to connect than the most well-intentioned words. Those are the words that came out of Janie's mouth as we sat in the circle at the Callanish Society's first ever young adult cancer retreat. One by one, person after person began to open up and share how cancer had been impacting their lives. There was this one woman, Patty, I can still see her so clearly. Colorful hair, funky outfit, and a whole lot of tenacity. But when she shared her story, she spoke about her sexual abuse, and something woke up inside of me. As I listened to everyone speak and share their stories in that circle, I realized that I wasn't at this retreat for my cancer. I was there to heal the wounds that had caused my cancer. When it was my turn to speak, I shared my story of sexual abuse that I experienced at the hands of my grandfather when I was a little girl. I shared about my deep programming around being seen and not heard, and how holding these secrets inside my body had made me sick. Near the end of the retreat, we sat in a grief ceremony, and we were each given smooth river rocks and a marker, and we were encouraged to write our losses that we had experienced because of cancer. One by one, we stepped forward and placed our stones into a cauldron of water, speaking our losses out loud. Losing my hair, losing my job, losing trust in my body. That retreat changed how I saw my cancer. It showed me where the deeper healing was required and the courage it would take to choose joy, not by pretending my past didn't exist, but by honoring how it shaped me. And now I help women have the courage to choose joy regardless of what life is throwing at them. And today, I'm excited to share with you one of the most important steps in being brave enough to choose joy. Because for some of us, joy feels dangerous. The most vulnerable human emotion is joy. Joy is so vulnerable, we dress rehearse tragedy to protect ourselves from disappointment. Brené Brown. Think about that for a moment. We literally practice disappointment to protect ourselves from fully experiencing joy. Like many of you, my life has been touched by grief and struggle. I've supported my immediate family through autism, anorexia, anxiety, PTSD, my own cancer diagnosis, and the ending of my marriage. When we have known struggle, joy can feel risky, because what if you taste it and it gets taken away? So suddenly, we stop choosing joy. We armor up. We disconnect. We stay busy. We lower our expectations. And we tell ourselves we really don't care. And slowly, we live disappointed on purpose, protecting ourselves from the very thing that makes life feel alive. Joy. But choosing joy isn't about forcing happiness or pretending that everything's okay. Choosing joy begins with living in alignment with the truth that your body already knows. And this is where authenticity comes in. Not as a buzzword, but as a pathway to joy. Authenticity is when your words, your actions, and your values are aligned. It's telling yourself the truth about who you are right now, not who you think you're supposed to be. And when we abandon that truth, joy quietly disappears. Yeah. Joy disappears. And suddenly, it's okay. For over a year, I had ongoing pain in my foot. I had tried everything. I had tried chiropractic care, massage, physiotherapy. Nothing was helping. And this mattered because 3 weeks later, I was supposed to hike the West Coast Trail. So I made an appointment with a woman that did massage and energy work. And I'd never worked with her before, but I didn't overthink it. I just called. 2 days later, I was laying on her massage table when she looked me directly in the eyes and said, "Shannon, you're full of resentment." I caught my breath because I knew it was true. I'd been living out of alignment for a very long time. I was people-pleasing. I was managing everyone else's needs. I was telling myself I was fine, but I wasn't. I wasn't at all. I was doing all the things that I thought everybody else needed me to do. I was putting my life on hold. I was staying small. But I was abandoning myself. And with that, I was abandoning joy. That same week, 2 other practitioners independently reflected the exact same thing back to me. And I'll never forget walking into my massage appointment and saying, "Daryl, my foot is still so unhappy." And he looked at me and he said, "Shannon, is it your foot that's unhappy or you that's unhappy?" The tears started to flow, and they didn't stop. How had I become so disconnected from myself, so willing to abandon myself? During that session, I released years of emotion that I'd been holding in my body. And 3 weeks later, I hiked that West Coast Trail. With no pain. And not because my foot had been fixed, but because I had finally decided to live in alignment with who I am. As the emotions released, so did the pain. I hadn't been lying to everybody else. I'd been lying to myself. But our bodies remember what our hearts resist feeling. Authenticity doesn't mean we never have misaligned thoughts. It means we notice them. And noticing matters because noticing brings us back into alignment. Noticing creates awareness. Awareness creates choice. And choice restores self-respect. And self-respect brings us back into our alignment. And that alignment, that's where joy lives. My favorite poet, Mark Nepo, he says this: The cost of not being who you are is that while you are busy pleasing everyone around you, a precious part of you is dying inside. Being brave enough to choose joy doesn't begin with changing your life. It begins with telling yourself the truth and having the courage to live it. Because joy is found when you're willing to live in alignment with the truth your body already knows.
Oh, this is a good crowd. All right. I grew up learning that love had to be earned. I was raised by a single mother below the poverty line. I knew instability, I knew abuse, and I knew what it meant to survive. So I learned to strive. I learned to compete. I learned that if I worked harder, if I achieved more, proved myself enough, I'd be safe. I would belong. And it worked. It really worked. I became capable. I became independent and resilient. And in my early 30s, I was a single mom building a beautiful career in lighting and design. I had incredible mentors, bosses. I had a business I was proud of. And I built the life that we're told we're supposed to want. The partner, the 2.5 kids, I have a French bulldog. The house, the vacations, security, stability, and respect. And it worked. From the outside, my life looked extraordinary. My ego was well-fed. Survivor, supermom, wonder wife. My ego was really well-fed. And inside, I was exhausted. Not because I had failed, but because I had succeeded at something that cost me myself. We talk about burnout, but we don't talk about misalignment. We talk about resiliency, we celebrate it, but we don't ask what we had to override to build it. And what I began to see was this. The same survival strategy that had once protected me was now running my life. And when survival becomes your identity, you don't know how to rest. You don't know how to soften. You don't know how to just be. I thought I was striving for success, but I was striving for love. Because somewhere along the way, I had learned that love is conditional, that it came from what I did. It came from what I'd achieved, from how well I performed. And it took collapse to teach me that my worth was not negotiated. It isn't proven, it's inherent. I learned that my worth was not something I had to build, it was something that I had to remember. I am worthy of love because I exist. And so are you. Not because of your resume, not because of your trauma, not because of any other reason, because you exist. 8 years ago, within 1 week, I was in 2 car accidents, traumatic brain injury, and complete nervous system dysregulation. I couldn't tolerate light, I couldn't tolerate sound or movement. My world got small. The woman whose motto was "time is money" on this job was suddenly forced into stillness. And what I thought was punishment was a return. Because in that forced stillness, a question I'd spent my whole life avoiding finally caught up with me. Who am I if I'm not what I do? not my roles, not my accomplishments, not my trauma, and not my resilience. Who am I beneath the striving? Most of us believe that we are our experiences, our bodies, our feelings, our beliefs, our pain. But what began to understand through neuroscience, through psychology, through spirituality, and even quantum research is that consciousness precedes form. There is something within you that has never been broken, something that has never been diminished, never been defined by what happened to you. Our soul lives only in present time. Our ego, our identity, is created from the past and the illusion of the future. Our pain body is the accumulation of all those things we never wanted to feel, and it reacts automatically. And when we mistake those layers for who we are, we create from fear. What I began to see is that there's layers to us. Who you are, and what you do. Who you are is timeless, untouched, and whole. You can call it soul, you can call it superconsciousness, you can call it pure potential. It exists only in present time. What you are is your conditioning. It's your history, your learned patterns, your subconscious. And what you do is your choice in this moment. Alignment is when what you do stops defending what you experienced, what you survived. And it starts expressing who you are. That's alignment. Here's what changed how I live and lead. We create from our conditioning, or we create from consciousness. The question is not whether we're creating, it's from what state. Our inner world, our beliefs, our thoughts, our emotional patterns is what I call the field. It's invisible, it's energetic, and it's foundational. Our outer world, our relationships, leadership, business, health, is form. And form always reflects the field. When my inner field was driven by survival, my outer life showed survival, more urgency, more pressure, more proving. But when my field became coherent, grounded, compassionate, calm, cleaner boundaries, healthier relationships, sustainable success. Field informs the form every single time. So the real question becomes, are you creating from chaos or are you creating peace? Most high-performing people are not exhausted because they're incapable. They're exhausted because they're split, living one identity on the outside and another on the inside, chasing success while starving for peace, holding everything together externally while internally we're disconnecting and we're disintegrating. Let me ask you something. Where in your life are you pushing when listening is what's needed? That awareness is not weakness. It's intelligence returning. At the heart of every human being are two essential forces. One that senses and one that acts. Often described as the feminine and the masculine, not genders. There are two beautiful energies within all of us. The feminine is presence. intuition, and deep listening. The masculine is direction and structure. It's movement. And when action disconnects from wisdom, everything falls apart. When intuition disconnects from structure, we drift. When we harmonize these two energies, we respond instead of react. We extract wisdom instead of repeating our wounds. We transmute pain, not by bypassing it, by being present with it. Presence is power. Presence interrupts patterns, and presence reconnects us with who we truly are. When we remember who we are beneath the conditioning, compassion returns, curiosity returns, clarity returns, calm returns, courage returns. Not because we've achieved them, because they've always been here. The future does not require tougher women, and it does not require stronger men. It requires integrated humans, humans who know that they are not their traumas and their dramas, not their resume, not their survival strategies, humans who understand we are always creating. So choose the field you are creating from wisely. Because when your inner world becomes coherent, your outer world reorganizes, not through force, but through alignment. You are not here to prove your worth. You are not here to do any of the things you think you are. You are here to remember your truth. Before what you do, remember who you are. Whole, aligned, alive. Thank you.
About 3 years ago, I was on my way to a First Nation community to attend the funeral of a dear friend's mom. The 3-hour drive and 90-minute ferry ride to get there seemed a bit excessive to some of my friends. I didn't know this woman, but not to me, because I love funerals. I know, it's weird, but I do, and I've been to many. Over time, I have come to love and appreciate the intimacy of people coming together in their heartache, laughing and crying, and sharing stories about a life that mattered. This funeral in this First Nation community, it was no different in that way. But as I sat there in conversation, learning more about their rituals, the way that they would come together and shut down the community for days, not just a few hours, I had a painful realization. I had no idea what it was like to belong to a community that close. I left home at 18. That distance from my family, it felt necessary for me to heal from some of those experiences. Those painful moments taught me that closeness equals heartbreak. So I chose distance. I moved across the country. I left relationships when commitment got real. Julie Roberts, sorry, babe. Original runaway bride. Yeah. I moved towns frequently, and when I could finally buy a condo and live by myself, I was relieved. Because living with other people was definitely too close. It's not that I didn't have friends. I have many friends spread across many places. But I didn't have that close group of friends. You know the ones where you go on road trips together and you pack the car with snacks and you make fun of each other and all your weirdnesses and you laugh it all out? Yeah? Oh, I wanted those friendships so badly. And when I heard about them, my heart physically hurt. because I didn't have that. When I was diagnosed with cancer, my biggest fear wasn't dying. It was dying without having those intimate relationships in my life. But the intimacy required and the vulnerability required for those relationships, it terrified me. But here I was with cancer, living by myself, family on the other side of the country, and things were about to get messy. So I reluctantly let my friends in. And it was amazing. They brought me food. Some came to treatments with me. On good days, we'd go for walks. Those are some of my favorite moments of that time period because we really prioritized being together. Yeah, sure, maybe because we all thought it might be the last time we would be together. Yeah, fair enough, you can laugh. But it mattered. It mattered. And as treatment went on and I got weaker, I reverted back to what I knew. And I canceled plans. I went to treatments by myself. And at the end, I started to dismantle all of the relationships of the folks that had seen me at my weakest. Do you want to know the irony here? I'm known for building connection. I literally help people be vulnerable with each other. I help them put down their shields so they can speak their truth, regardless of how messy, so that they can come closer together. It's what I do, and I'm really good at it. And I love it. I love watching people when they arrive and they're guarded and defensive and even scared. And then when they leave, there's this lightness, this strength that I think only comes when we truly allow ourselves to be seen and belong. And the secret ingredient to get from here to here? It's vulnerability. Yeah. Without it, people stay stuck here. And living this way is exhausting. I see it in people's faces. When we keep everybody at arm's length all the time, it comes at a cost. For me, the cost was being scared and alone on many nights when I needed help. For our communities, though, I think the cost is much greater. When I was in that First Nation community, the sense of strength in that room was palpable. But these folks had experienced so much distance, enforced distance, actually, not by choice, distance from their land, distance from their language and their culture, distance from their children. But it seemed to me that when their hearts hurt the most, they didn't choose more distance like I did. They chose to come together again and again and again. And I started to see that the vulnerability and coming together in our heartache, maybe it just wasn't a secret ingredient, but maybe it was the medicine that allowed their hearts to heal and get stronger. I realized in that moment, I wasn't scared of vulnerability. I was scared of the heartbreak. I didn't want to feel that again. These folks were amazing, and their strength super inspiring. And then when I had that realization, I started to wonder, maybe I'm not the only one that's creating distance in their lives to keep their hearts from breaking. We all do this in some way, like staying stuck in our positions or focusing on our differences. Or saying, I'm fine, I got this. But what's the cost? I think the cost to our communities is that strength that comes when we truly allow our hearts to heal together. The good news is, from what I know, it doesn't take, to build that connection, it doesn't take like big, grandiose gestures, like wedding proposals. Thank God. No, closeness, it happens in the small moments. It's admitting when you don't know something, or asking for help, or saying the honest thing. It's those small moments that bring us closer together. So get this. About 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in the living room of my new home that I now share with 2 housemates. Yes, thank you. Yeah. And my one housemate, she was teasing my other housemate about not going to seek medical care for what looked to be like a very broken toe. And she was like, whoa, I'm a man. Obviously, my bones realign by themselves. Oh, I don't need help. Anyways, we all started laughing. It was such a sweet moment for me. And that night, it also happened to be the 7-year anniversary of my cancer diagnosis. And every once in a while, on this anniversary, my body likes to celebrate by reenacting the whole thing. And all the symptoms come back, and my mind spirals down that what-if rabbit hole. And the only thing that I have found that alleviates that is to also go seek medical care. In the past, I would have done that by myself. I would have been scared by myself. But, you know, I'm trying on this closeness thing. Yeah. So I decided to share my story, and it was amazing. They listened. They didn't try to fix me. And then one of them said the words I had been waiting for my whole life. Let's get some snacks and get in the car and go together. Road trip! It was so good. So, vulnerability, allowing all parts of me to be seen, it's a practice. It still stretches me. But what I know for sure is that distance, it doesn't protect me from pain. It does not protect my heart from breaking. It only keeps me alone and scared. So, until that moment, where, I don't know, maybe some of you are sitting at my funeral, I'm already planning it, and you're laughing and you're crying, and you're supporting each other in your own heartache, because you and I have risked being vulnerable together in this lifetime. Until that moment, I'm choosing heartbreak over distance, because our hearts can heal, and distance costs far more. Thank you.
I have a question that I'd like you all to ponder. What would change in our workplaces if women stopped apologizing for having a voice? I used to think that power in a corporate world sounded like certainty. So it was loud voices, fast answers, and zero visible doubt. And I quickly learned that as a woman, I was expected to master a pretty strange balancing act. I was allowed to be confident, but not if my confidence intimidated somebody else. I was allowed to make decisions, but not if those decisions were used with emotion. I was also allowed to be bold, but only if I was still being agreeable. So I did what many women learn to do. I learned to edit myself. I used softer language. I asked questions when I already had the answers. And I hesitated before taking up space, even when the work, the data, and the results supported me. And the thing was, there wasn't anybody that directly told me to do this. There's no magic blueprint for how to make yourself feel less at work. But the message was everywhere. Somewhere along the way, women learn that leadership requires an apology. So we over-explain, we over-prepare, we over-prove just to be taken seriously. And we call it professionalism. But what it really is permission seeking. I have sat in countless boardrooms with women who have worked damn hard to earn their seat at that table. Imagine for a moment you're that woman. You're sitting there at that table where decisions are being made, ones that affect your team, your work, possibly even your future. You have the answer. You know it. You can feel it. But instead of speaking plainly, you start with, I was just thinking that maybe, I was just wondering, or my personal favorite, this might sound like a silly question. These are not the starts of questions. These are apologies that are disguised as introductions. We need to learn to reframe. We need to learn to say what we mean. I have another perspective. My idea is this. I'd like to share my opinion on this matter. There's a pattern that many of us will recognize in this room. A woman makes a thoughtful point in a meeting. Everyone nods, the room moves on. Minutes later, someone else will repeat the same idea. It's often a man. Often a man. But this time, the room leans in. The room is sitting straighter, they're engaged. The idea didn't change, but the voice that it came from did. And most of the time, it's not malicious. It's often not even conscious, but it's what happens when authority is assumed for some voices and still questioned for others. When women soften, preface, or apologize for an idea, the room will hear a possibility. But when someone else utters that same idea with certainty, the room hears leadership. That's not a character flaw. That is a cultural reflex. About 4 years ago, I was in the middle of a meeting doing this. I was over-justifying, over-explaining why I wanted to move forward with a decision. Inwardly, I was screaming, holy fuck, just let me fucking do this, I know I'm right. And the man sitting across from me, my leader, probably very exasperated by me at this point, he interrupted me mid-sentence, and he said, why are you asking me permission to go be yourself? Just fucking go do it already. Now, that didn't just interrupt a meeting. It interrupted a belief system that I didn't even realize I was living by. The truth was, I wasn't asking for the permission or approval because I needed it. I was asking because I was trained to believe that power looked a certain way, sounded a certain way, belonged to a certain type of leader. And I didn't think that leader looked like me. Now, there's probably some unexpected outcomes out of that. I will happily bring up Star Wars in almost every conversation. I eagerly recommended Spaceballs 2 as our next team building event when it comes out. And in any given day, you can find me confidently walking through the offices barefoot, like today. But it also opened up the door for me to be able to self-reflect. Why was I asking for permission to be myself at work? Why was I afraid to use the power I already inherently had? In corporate spaces, power is often defined as dominance. So it's that certainty without softness. And I am missing my words today. It's that control without emotions. Clearly, I'm emotional today. But these are traits that we celebrate as leadership, especially when men display them. But when women do, we are labeled as difficult. We are too much, too intense. So many women will respond by doing the opposite. We shrink. We compromise parts of ourselves to feel like we belong, and we trade authenticity for acceptance. And slowly, almost invisibly, we trade parts of ourselves and we disappear into the very roles that we worked damn hard to earn. But here's what I learned after that moment. The problem isn't that women aren't powerful. We kick ass on a good day, on a bad day too often. But it's that power has been narrowly defined. And that definition leaves no room for the kind of leadership that many women already practice. Leadership that is rooted in emotional intelligence, clarity, courage, and collaboration. For us, authenticity is not a personality trait. For women, it is a leadership strategy. Being true to yourself means alignment. It means that your values and your actions match, your voice and your decisions are in sync. And suddenly you will stop performing leadership and you will start embodying it. My favorite author, Margaret Atwood, once said, "We still think of powerful men as leaders and powerful women as an anomaly." I think about this quote a lot. I don't want to be an anomaly. Weird and quirky, absolutely. But an anomaly, no. We need to hear women's voices. There is a truth that many women learn early in their careers, myself included, which is that being liked feels safer than being respected. So we take on the invisible tasks, the note-taking, the poster making, the emotional glue of the office. But influence doesn't grow from being agreeable all the time. It grows from being valuable and visible. I am surrounded by powerful, strong women. And I have learned that strength does not need to be aggressive to be effective, that empathy is not the opposite of authority, and that confidence does not require an apology. And I realized that every time I softened my voice to seem more palatable, every time that I hesitated before making a decision, and every time I hesitated before taking up space, I wasn't being humble. I was disappearing. And when I stopped doing that, when I started to own my voice clearly and without hesitation, something incredible happened. People listened. And it wasn't because I became harsher. It wasn't because I became harder. It's because I became clearer. Power isn't about speaking louder. It's about being authentic. And it's about speaking without that apology. There's a chance that you will be labeled, misunderstood, not be liked. Being authentic and visible is not risk-free. But shrinking has a cost too. And that's one that's rarely measured. When one woman leads authentically, they don't just change their own experience, they change the environment for everyone around them. Because leadership is contagious. And when one woman leads without apology, she automatically gives the right to another to do the same. She shows them that you don't need to shrink to succeed, that you don't need to prove you belong. You already do, and that your voice is not optional. It is essential. Your voice does not need permission to matter. This isn't a call to fight the system. You don't need to run down the street screaming, "I've got the power," like you're playing God in a Jim Carrey movie. But it is a call to stop vanishing inside of it, to stop asking permission to be yourself, and to stop equating power with silence and self-erasure. Because power doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from refusing to disappear. One day, there will be a woman in the room watching you. And this might be your classroom, your living room, your store, your boardroom. Watching how you speak, how you disagree, how you hold your ground without hostility, and your warmth without weakness. And your authenticity will quietly give her permission to be authentic too. That's influence. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it changes who feels allowed to speak next, which might be the most important impact of all. You already belong in the room. Speak like it. And so I ask you again, as you leave here today, you and the women that you surround yourself with, what happens if you stopped apologizing for having a voice? What kind of impact can you make in our world? Thank you.
One day I was headed on my way to Tofino for a vacation with my husband, and it was a really tough season in business. It felt like it was never ending. And we got there, I needed the break, settled in, and we woke up one morning and headed to the beach for a walk. I took a big breath of the salty, fresh air, and I had an epiphany. Honey, joy is flooding back into my heart. I'm feeling peaceful again, and my situation hasn't even improved yet. Like, how the heck is this happening? He smiled. I'll tell you more about it later, how it actually happened. But for now, I want to leave you with this. That was the season where I learned how to master my emotions instead of my circumstances mastering me. It was a pretty big deal for me. For years, I've built business up until that point where from the outside, it looked like I'd gotten some things figured out. I'd written 2 books, I'd spoken on stages I only dreamt about. I was working with some really cool people, executives, business owners, physicians, doing really fulfilling work. My cup was full, my revenue was strong. But inside, it was a different situation. Talk about shaky legs. I felt so unstable because it felt like overnight, the business strategies that had been working for me to create income just stopped. What do you do in that situation where everything that you've been trying doesn't seem to be panning out? I felt like I was floundering, and I'm curious, what do you do? What do you do in that kind of situation? And I am authentically asking, but we don't have time for me to hear your stories right now. I would love for you to share them with me. So, you might be wondering, what did I do in that situation? I just did what any lone wolf would do, and I kept pushing forward. And I kept striving on, and it wasn't panning out. It was actually creating more problems. I started feeling tight in my body. I started feeling like I was turning into a serious version of myself, and I was losing my capability to enjoy my life like I usually do. So, as the stress mounted and the pressure grew, I realized that I was operating my business from this problematic belief, and that was, making money is all up to me, it is all my responsibility, my timing is the best timing, my plans are the best plans. I may have just been operating from a tiny place of ego, not aware of it at the time. And I felt even more disturbed by another realization, and that was that I had made money the source of my peace and the source of my security and the source of my worth. No kidding, right? That I was a wreck inside and no one knew, totally embarrassed and no one knew. Because if we make circumstances the master of our emotions, anything external, whether it be money for you, think about it. Are you making anything external the master of your emotions, giving it power over you? That's exactly what I was doing. So I got to the end of my rope, and I made a really uncomfortable decision that I needed help. So my ego said, "What the heck are you doing? You are going to show everyone how weak you are." And my heart said, "Back off. It's like the strongest thing we could do here. We're going to ask for some help." So repeat after me. I need help. I'm pretty sure some of you are like, I am not saying I need help. Because that was me. She can't make me say I need help. I called my coach up that day, and she didn't even know that I was in the situation that I was in. I was so good at not acknowledging my emotions because I felt like, think of yourself in this situation, I felt like if I gave those emotions any attention, they were going to have power over me and suck me down this like dark hole where there would be no return. Show of hands, anyone ever felt like if I pay attention to those uncomfortable feelings, it's going to feel like I'm out of control and they'll have power over me? Anyone else been in that situation? But I surpassed that urge to just keep pretending, and I phoned my coach. I said, I really need help. Here's the situation. This is what my finances look like right now. And she said, okay, blah, blah, blah. She said these things. She set me straight. And she helped me realize, almost like took the blinders off my eyes, these are my problematic perceptions about myself and money that were creating financial results that I hated. And when she did that, that brings me back to the day where I was walking with my husband on that beautiful beach, and joy came flooding back in. I reclaimed my peace, even before my circumstances shifted. So my emotions shifted before the money came flooding back in, which it did, greater than ever before that I'd experienced. I got so excited thinking, if I can change my behaviors and I can change my results in any area of my life, then I want to teach this to my clients. I want to show them what's possible and how to simplify the process. So my fiery passion to be able to help others came back, and I remembered money's not my goal. Helping other people solve their problems, serving people, that is our goal in business. But I'd forgotten. I'd gotten my priorities mixed up. So I dove into all I could find on emotional regulation, on habit transformation, on mindset repatterning, on all these things. And then woke up in the middle of the night, wrote down frameworks, simplified the process, and shared them with my clients so they could get the same results I was getting. I was so excited. Catching that fire had reminded me of why I was doing what I was doing in the first place. So you might be thinking, okay, Amy, what's in it for me? What are the benefits of this story to me? And I could share with you lots of steps that I took to do that inner work to create the transformation, and I'm happy to. I'll share with you three of the main steps. If you want to, in any area of your life, even if it's not financial, where you want to experience a breakthrough and transformation, these apply to your health, to your relationships. But if you want to move from stuck to personally and financially free, step number 1, don't be that lone wolf anymore. Get help. It's the strongest thing you can do. Step number 2, choose your beliefs about yourself and about money with intention, because they will directly impact your results. And step number 3, focus your priority. Your focus needs to be on helping others. And all of the results that you want will naturally flow. So my wish for you tonight is that you will intentionally choose your beliefs about yourself and about money, because when you do that, it impacts your emotional state. Mine is so different than it was before. It impacts your behaviors. That impacts your results. And ultimately, you get to change the trajectory of your future. Thank you.